Hello, PWOC ladies. This is Mara Yarber, your historian at Fort Jackson, PWOC. And as you see, I've got a special guest who's joined us today for our legacy moment. This is Sheri Williams, our president. And if you have not gotten to meet Sheri, then you get that pleasure today to get to know a little bit more about Sheri and how PWOC has impacted her life. Thank you, Sheri, for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me, Mari. I'm really excited to do this, to get to talk with you personally, be a part of your legacy moments, and to get to talk to our ladies today.
Awesome. Well, we're just going to jump right in. So Sheri, tell us a little bit about how you came to know Christ as Savior and maybe some of those early Christian influences in your life.
Sure. That's the best place to start. So I did grow up in the church. My parents were Christians when they got married, or actually became Christians as a young married couple. So I was raised in the church. Even after my parents divorced and remarried, my dad and my stepmother were very active in our church. And so I grew up in youth group and going to church on Sundays when I would go to dad's for the weekend. And even though my mom, wasn't active in church at that time, she was still a believer. And so, I did grow up in a Christian home. And I would say that youth group was really one of the things that the Lord used to probably keep me alive. I had a rough teenage years, and so going to youth group was a lifeline for me. And then ultimately, after I had my first child, I was not walking with the Lord. I was not living for Him, and He began to draw me to Himself. I started recognizing right from wrong, and understanding my own sin, and so I rededicated my life to the Lord when I was 24, and then that really began the faith journey that I'm on now. And it's funny because people who I meet now in church and PWOC, I'm a different person walking with God than I was. And so I always laugh and say, ooh, you wouldn't have recognized me back then.
I got it. I agree. I had some of those same influences like youth group and family. Yes. Those are very important. Tell us a little bit about how you became a military spouse.
Oh, that's a good story. So my husband, Mark, he and I met actually at a young adults Bible study. So it was through my church, but Mark was at a different church, and he had come into contact with this young adults group. And so we connected there. It's actually a really great story. But we connected, and Mark and I knew right away that there was something going on, between us. Even when we were, that the first 8 months, we just became the best of friends. But we started counseling with our pastor even then, with my pastor, our young adults leader. And I remember, talking to him, in a courtship season when we moved into courtship. And I remember, he was in the reserves at the time. And he was at the time it was a chaplain assistant, or now it's a religious affairs specialist, but he was a chaplain assistant in the Army Reserves. And I remember him saying that he wanted to move into the chaplaincy, and that he wanted to become a full-time chaplain. His calling was to soldiers. And I remember him saying, we'll never be rich, but we'll be comfortable. And that was the plan that he laid out for me. And so when Mark and I got married, he was in his first year of seminary. And so his second and third year, we lived together as husband and wife in finishing seminary. And so for the first 10 years of our marriage, this whole idea of we'll never be rich, but we'll be comfortable was not exactly playing out, because at that time the door kept being closed to the active component, and the AGR program just remained closed, and Mark was a reserve chaplain, and so he had to have a job during the week, and so I loved being a reserve chaplain. I was very active in FRG. My dad was a soldier, and I always knew that I would marry someone. It was on my list, ladies. If you've ever had a list, of things you wanted in your spouse, I always knew that some kind of military experience was going to be on my husband's list. So I was a reserve chaplain for the first 10 years. I was a reserve spouse for the first 10 years of our marriage. And then just in the last 5 years, God opened that door to full-time ministry and the chaplaincy. And it's been a whirlwind. It's been a dream come true for our family, and so here we find ourselves.
Yeah, and I had no idea that your father had served too.
He did 41 years, Mari.
Wow.
41 years. When my dad retired, he had served 41 years of service to our nation. And yeah, he was, and just a little story. It's one of my favorite stories to relate between my dad and my husband. So when Mark comes home from work, I love to sit on the floor and take off his boots. So I untie his boots and I take them off, and I take off his blousers and his socks, and I rub his feet. And some women are like, what? But I say that because I used to sit at my dad's feet and watch him put his military boots on or off. I would sit, and I can remember him getting ready for well, what did they call it? Drill. At the time, they called it drill weekend, and I remember him getting ready. And so there's an emotional connection for me, and so that's just a little something. Welcome to my world, ladies.
Well, so other than like being PWOC president, were there some other experiences where you've had roles or leadership in whether they be spiritual leadership or not, that you would share with us?
Yeah, I was actually excited about sharing this part. So I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with Amway, the multi-level marketing company Amway. Well, so my family was very involved in Amway. While I was in my teens and up into my 20s, I was very involved in Amway. And so I grew up reading leadership books, listening to tapes, going to seminars, and it was all about working with people, developing a team, learning about leadership and personal growth and development. And I really believe that season laid a foundation for the gifts and talents that God had already put in me, but also what he was going to use in me. And through me. And so I also myself, when I became an adult, got, involved in multi-level marketing. And when Mark and I got together, that was something that we realized was probably going to compete with our ministry. And so we laid that aside, but I never lost all the years of foundational growth really in leadership. And then in terms of ministry and service, serving the church and serving the Lord, I mentioned a minute ago that I was very involved in FRG. When my husband was a battalion chaplain, I came alongside of our battalion commander and my husband as a battalion FRG leader. And I would go around, now remember, this is in the reserves. And I would go to the different companies, which were in different areas of New England. And I would travel to the companies and help them stand up their FRGs at the company level. And that was, I still have friends from that season, in the New England area that will be lifelong friends, even though our husbands aren't in the same units anymore. But that was the first introduction to me of military spouses, And so I can relate that to, I got chills. I can relate that to the connections that I'm making now in PWOC. I also had opportunities to serve in my home church in New Hampshire, and always wanted to serve however I could, you know, whether it was, I was a preschool nursery teacher at church on Sunday mornings. I led women's ministry and did some Bible studies. And then most recently, another area that I serve in even currently, my sister is a missionary in Haiti. And that's a huge part of my life. My sister and her family, I've actually been on the mission field in Haiti 14 times.
Wow.
And am just praying that God will open the door back up for us to go again many times more. But their organization, if I may, is called Laganav Haiti Missions. And I actually I serve with my sister kind of as the US director, if you will. My sister and her husband are the executive directors, and I come alongside them in leadership to help because their communication is so difficult there. Sometimes I can do things here easier for them. And so I helped to, you know, develop their board. They have a board for their organization now. And so even that is something that I still currently do. So I say my family, PWOC, and Laganav Haiti Missions is where God has all my attention right now.
Wow. That's a lot. And I have friends who are missionaries in Haiti too. I know that that's just a ripe area, and they've had so much tragedy with storms. And things, so it's just a constant need for
It is.
not only meeting spiritual needs, but meeting physical needs there too. So what caused you to take the leadership position here at being president of PWOC? And is this your first position within the PWOC organization?
Oh, that's a good question. So this is actually only my second PWOC. So I just mentioned about, you know, coming into the AGR program after 10 years of reserves. My husband was picked up for AGR. For those of you who don't know, that's active duty in support of Guard and Reserves. So he would call himself an active reservist. And so our first duty station was at Fort Knox, and right away, so Mark had come actually to Fort Knox before the children and I did. My oldest son was a senior in high school. We knew we were coming to Fort Knox, and the children and I stayed behind so that Tanner could finish his senior year of high school. And so Mark went ahead and was there for about 6 months before we came. And he had told me, oh, there's this group of ladies that meet here. It's called PWOC. You're going to love it. And so when I got here, it was like the second week that I was here. And I went to my first PWOC meeting. I was hooked.
Yes.
Hooked right away. And so that first year, so I got there in February. By May, I was the newly appointed retreats chair because I had worked with Mark when he was in the reserves doing Strong Bonds retreats. And I was very involved with that. And so we kind of, the newly elected president and I felt that that would be a good fit for me. So I was retreats chair. And then the second year, I actually was very close with the president, and we had spent the whole year I was in retreats, we talked a lot about leadership development. And when she became president that year, she actually asked me if I would become her leadership development coordinator. And so that year I got to implement a program really where we, you know, did leadership training opportunities. I did once a month after PWOC, and then one Saturday an extended workshop. one Saturday per quarter. And just really to help women grow in leadership in their homes, their churches, their communities, and PWOC. And man, I mean, I want to believe that women were blessed by that, but I grew so much. And then fast forward to coming to Fort Jackson, and the Lord really, really had laid on my heart that I was to homeschool my first year here. And all of my time and effort was to be put into being with, my kids and, working on some character development and, things like that. And so I didn't even get to attend PWOC. I would say the spring semester I was able to tap in a little bit. I started to meet some people, and I was there for some of their leadership selection process. And I had started to pray. I knew the kids were going to be going back to public school in the fall. And I had started to pray and, Lord, are you releasing me yet, in service? And I just kept, it just wasn't there. So that year was the year, last year, Sandra Burgess was our president, and I did not serve on the board again. God did release me to do some Bible study facilitation. So I came alongside Jaquel, our VP of Spiritual Life at the time, and did some Bible study facilitation. And I just kept continuing to pray, Lord, are you going to release me in service, and where? I was also looking at being involved in PTO at my kid's school, at my daughter's school, and that's kind of a long story, but the Lord closed that door. And during this last year's leadership selection process, the Lord had made it very clear to me that I was to apply for president. And even though I feel very young in PWOC, I knew that through the different things that I've shared with you, that God had given me enough to apply. And in order to accomplish the things that he would ask of me, what I had was never going to be enough, but that he always is. And so in obedience, I applied for the presidency. And I went through the process and was asked to be your president this year. And the Lord has remained faithful to use the gifts and talents that he's put in me, but to also be exactly who he is, and to be more. I am not enough. I love serving you guys. I love being president. I love my board. But I'm just not, without him, without the Lord, and, my gifts and talents would never be enough. And so I'm just thrilled that we serve an incredible God. I really am.
Well, and just so the ladies know the full story of how I got roped in with all this. Yes.
You sure did.
Yes, I sure did. I sure did. So the day that Sandra Burgess introduced Sheri as our PWOC president on Facebook Live, I said, Steve, I love this lady, Sheri Williams. She's going to make a wonderful PWOC president. I'm going to do anything I can to encourage her. And then she calls me and she says, Mari, I need you to do something for me and pray about it. And I did. And I'm so glad that I did. It's been a blessing. Thank you for asking me. And it's been a blessing to be a part of the board. It's actually my first time to be on a board. I facilitated and done other things. But Sheri and I just made a really neat connection, and I'm just really thankful that we're getting to work together this year to make this year a great year for everybody. So on a lighter note, I see your PWOC cup. So I want you to tell me what's your favorite PWOC piece of swag that you have. What's your favorite?
Yeah, it would be this one. Well, this and the pin. So I think the PWOC pin is very special. I've learned that, pins are special in the military. I have a chaplain crest. I have had pins with my husband's unit. I had an FRG pin, and so being able to wear the PWOC pin is very special to me. And I love that, at least in the past, when we were meeting in person, your third time coming to PWOC, you were given a pin. And I am I can't wait to be able to give newcomers, you know, their pin. But then this mug, which I think is so beautiful, this was actually a gift from Michelle Gramling, our VP of Spiritual Life. And she and I actually met at Fort Knox. The year I was Leadership Development Coordinator, she was our Titus II. And then we've really gotten to know each other better here. And she just, for no other reason than she is generous and loving, she came by one day and was like, oh, here's a little gift bag just because I love you. See you later. Bye. And gave me a beautiful PWOC mug.
Well, I love it. I love it.
Thank you.
Considering that the legacy moment idea was birthed by you, tell us a little bit about how that happened and what does the legacy of PWOC mean to Sheri Williams?
Yeah, well, this is the best part, ladies. Hopefully you've held on long enough to hear this part. Going back even further from when I asked you to be our historian, I had given a testimony / devotional around Thanksgiving last year, and I was talking about my heritage, which is very important to me, and going back and talking about some of, you know, my military heritage and all the way back to the Pilgrims, and you had come, and I was relating it to Jesus's heritage scripturally. And you had come up to me and you were like, I love genealogy. I love it. And we really connected about genealogy. And so I knew coming into PWOC as your president, that there was a wealth of history in the creation of PWOC and the execution and connection all these years. And because PWOC is done and facilitated, executed at a local level, I did not want our body to miss all the history, not just of Fort Jackson PWOC, but of PWOC at large. And my experience, albeit limited, remember, only 5 years now, of historian was somebody who would take lots of pictures at our events, maybe post them online. My first historians were incredible. They did scrapbooks. But I had this idea of our historian really tapping more into the history and the legacy. What does PWOC bring to the table? So we bring ourselves, we bring our stories, our personalities, our gifts and talents, our denominations to PWOC and say, God, use us. But PWOC as an organization brings something to us. And there's systems and there's, you know, traditions and there's history and legacy. And I really knew, Mari, that your passion for genealogy could match this vision of tapping into that history and legacy and bringing it to the women of the Fort Jackson PWOC. I just didn't know at the time exactly how passionate you would be about it. And I got all the glory, and I won't embarrass Mari, but ladies, you need to know this woman has taken the little vision that I gave her, and she's just blown up all that you're going to get to see and hear. You know, this interview today is just a little piece of that. So, you know, my place, I have a place in the history of PWOC. It's this year. It's these last 5 years. And some of you who are watching this, you have 15 years of PWOC experience. Some of you have 20, 30, anywhere between a day to 65 years of PWOC experience. And I just want us all to be able to kind of wrap ourselves up in that unity and in that camaraderie, and see how that history and that legacy weaves us as PWOC sisters together.
So in thinking about your service in PWOC and talking about your experience really only being the second PWC. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
So there's probably a lot of our ladies that have maybe only attended and never been involved in leadership roles before, but maybe they've considered it. So what word would you say to them today to encourage them or give them the confidence that they need to just even find out information about
Yeah,
different?
that's good. That's such an important part of this whole story of PWOC and my story and your story, and for you ladies who Mari's talking about. So when that first time that I went to PWOC, I walked in, I was greeted by the participation gal, newcomers. Oh my gosh, they made me feel so welcome. And I walked further in, and I was looking all around. It was so lovely, and there was this trifold board, big trifold, and it had on it a picture and a bio and a position for the entire extended board. And this was a very full board. And I got to look and see, and what impressed me the most was all the different opportunities: hospitality, historian, leadership, president, programs, you name it. I saw all of these opportunities for people to do what they're passionate about. And then I also had seen the aims: lead, teach, develop, involve. It was all about it. There was no exclusion. It was not what you can't do, but it was what you can do. And also I learned, the degrees of opportunities. I have this one woman who came to kick off this year, and she is a very seasoned woman in ministry and in life. And she could probably be a president of PWOC. And she said, I've served in leadership, I've done these things, but right now what I want to do, I just want to do. I want to make things. I don't want to be in leadership. I want to do. And I was like, welcome, let's have you do, because you can. There's so many opportunities to be involved, and service in PWOC, it really, there's just a lot to it. So anything that a sister does in PWOC is in service to God, first and foremost. And so for the sister who loves crafting, Lynn Cato, let's say, she's our in-reach coordinator, and she has women who are joining her in crafting at the Crafting Thrive group. And so because they love to make, and they're going to make stuff, and they're going to do it together, and they're going to have fun. And then some of the things that they make, they're going to, give out as love tokens at our first program day. So they're serving the sisters of PWOC based on something that they're excited about, something that they want to do. And so you ladies can serve in so many different ways, based on your passion, your talent, your giftings. I often was looking for a place where so I knew that I knew that God had put in me some gifts and talents in leading a group. And doors are not always opened for development and growth and opportunities for women to lead. And I found in this organization all the tools, the opportunities, the mentorship to move in my gifts and talents. And you have that opportunity too, ladies. Again, whether it is because you want to give some time, you want to take pictures because you're a photographer, you want to love on babies because you're a baby whisperer, you want to lead a committee, you want to plan a party, right? Our program days, there's a lot to that, but there's a whole committee of people who come together and put these programs together. And if you're a party planner, man, we've got a place for you. You might be good with numbers. And so you can serve as a finance liaison. You might be good on social media, you know, and that is your thing. Well, we have such an active social media, you know, right now, and we need you. You might be good on the computer and sending emails and, you know, compiling reports. You're administrative. Well, there's a place for that. And so I just say, if you want to be involved, be involved. If you want to donate your time, donate your time. We welcome as much or as little. And if you find yourself in a season where you just need people to love on you, and you need to be able to come and be in fellowship, be ministered to by sisters, be ministered to by the Spirit, and you just are not at a place, maybe your husband is deployed and you've got babies at home, just come and be with us. That's okay too, all of it. It's all okay. Just come, let's just do this together.
Well, and as a personal word of testimony, I just want everybody to know that what you see with Sheri Williams is what you get. This is her and her beautiful heart. And honestly, leading during COVID-19 has been difficult for our board in general. We have faced unique challenges, but I'm going to say above all else, Sheri has directed us to be focused on Jesus Christ and the needs of our ladies. And then everything else, we can testify that the Lord has just made a way when there was no way. And we are just so thankful that PWOC is still moving forward, and we are uniquely ministering during this time of COVID-19. Sheri, thank you so much for your time today. Is there anything else you'd like to say to the ladies before we close out?
I do just want to close out by saying, ladies, you're going to see information coming out about our first in-person opportunity. We're going to have a program day in November, and be looking for that information. And we're so excited to be in person for a November program day. Thank you for your time, Mari. I really appreciate the chance to talk to you and share my heart.
Thank you, Sheri. I appreciate it. And thank you for your leadership for PWOC. Ladies, thank you for joining us for this legacy moment. And we hope to see you soon in person as Sheri said, we get ready to meet with you in person. Have a great day. Bye.